Hi, welcome back to our Honors Geometry playlist. On this video, we'll look at some linear pairs and vertical angles. So a quick reminder on our vocabulary that a linear pair is two adjacent angles, which means that they share a side. Two adjacent angles that together add up to 180 degrees. That would be your linear pair. Now, vertical angles are angles that are formed by intersecting lines, and they are directly across from each other. So the left and right sides would be vertical, and the top and the bottom sides are going to be vertical. And in any geometry class, the most important thing you can do, like in many math classes, is study your vocabulary. If you don't know what the vocabulary words mean, then it's very difficult to solve those problems. So let's try a few here. Find the value of each variable. Well, first I need to classify what kind of angles do I have. I have vertical angles. Well, what do I know about vertical angles? Vertical angles are always congruent. They're always equal to each other. So if they're vertical, if they're across from each other, like these top and bottom, or the left and the right angles, those angles will always be equal to each other or congruent to each other. All right, let me zoom back in here. So I have a pair of vertical angles. Well, what does that mean? That means that these two angles must be congruent. They must be equal. So I should set up my equation of 2x minus 10 equals 120 degrees. And I'll give you some time here to solve this one on your own. Just be careful about your algebra. And now let's move on to number 20. So number 20, I need to classify first what kind of angle pair do I have. Well, this is a linear pair. Notice how together they make a nice straight line. They're adjacent, and when you put them together, they make a nice straight line. They're a linear pair. And what do linear pairs always do? Well, if they make a line, they should add to 180 degrees, right? Because if they add to make a straight line, well, a straight line's 180. So together they should make 180 degrees, which means that the equation I should set up, I need to say that this first angle on the left, 2x, if I were to add that to the other angle in that linear pair, I should get 180 degrees. And again, take your time, pause the video, solve them, unpause, check your work. Now 21 is where it gets a little bit more challenging. That's where I throw two variables in there. So let's just try to solve for one first. What like terms do I see? Well, I see a 2x plus 25, and I see a 3x minus 10. And again, the most important thing that we can do is classify our angle pairs. What kind of angles do I see with these like terms? Well, it looks like they're across from each other. It looks like these are vertical angles. Well, if they're vertical, if they're across from each other, what do I know about vertical angles? They should always be congruent or equal. So I have two problems really that I need to solve on this question. So I'll start with 2x plus 25, and that should be congruent to 3x minus 10, and the reason why they're equal is because, again, they're vertical angles, and part of that definition is that they are always congruent. So we need to have those definitions down. And let's take a minute here on your own, pause the video, solve for x, unpause, check your answer. And I'll show you the answer on this one. So here x should be 35. which means that I should end up with 95 and 95. Now the last variable I have to solve for is y. And I don't have any more y's, but what I do have is I have a linear pair right here. So check that out. I have two angles that together add up to 180. I also have this linear pair. So there's a second linear pair that I could use to solve for y. Let's look at the first linear pair that might be a little bit more immediately apparent to a student or a viewer. I have a linear pair here with y and with 2x plus 25. But hold on, I know that that's not just 2x plus 25. I found out that that's really 95. And if I could avoid that from happening, that would be nice. This is really 95 degrees. So I have y and I have 95 that together should add up to a straight line. They're a linear pair. They add up to 180. So I know that y plus 95 should get me 180 degrees. And if I were to use the other linear pair, I'd end up with the same thing. So if I were to use that linear pair, you still end up with y plus 95 equals 180 degrees. All right, 22. Again, first thing I need to do, identify your like terms. Here's some like terms. And once I know what my like terms are, I need to classify those angle pairs. All right, and we'll zoom all the way back in. There we go. So what angle pairs do I see? Well, I see two angles that are across from each other. Well, those are vertical. And if they're vertical, let me check my definitions one more time. If they're vertical, they're across from each other, they are always congruent, which means that 8y minus 102 has to be equal to 2y plus 6. Every single time. And now when I solve for y, 6y is 108. So it should be, that's 60 plus 48, or 10 plus 8 is 18. So y should be 18. All right, so y is 18. Which means I get 42 degrees and 42 degrees. But I still have this other variable to solve for. So let's take our, I gotta stop doing that. No, it's gone again. Okay, try this one more time. I gotta look at my known values here. I have 3x, that's the only other variable that I need to solve for, and 42. I have a linear pair here. So there's another linear pair, 3x and 42. Well, if that's a linear pair, let me look at my definitions. They should add to 180. So I could say 3x plus 42 equals 180. And again, let's pause the video, solve this one, unpause, check your work. 3x should be equal to 138. That's 120 plus 18. So x should be 46. 120 plus 18. Why don't you try 23 and 24 on your own? Try them out. Pause the video, unpause, and check your work when you're ready. What like terms do I see? I see y and y as a linear pair. I see x and x also as a linear pair, which means that if I add up 7x minus 248 and x plus 44, I should get, if my screen doesn't do that zoom out thing anymore, I should get 180 if I were to add these up. And then in red, I've got 2y plus 50 plus 5y minus 17, and that should also get 180 because that is also a linear pair. So you end up with 7y plus 33 equals 180, or 7y equals 147. So y should be 21. Or in green, for the x's, 8y, that's negative 204. So if I add 204, I should get 384. Oh man, 384 divided by 8. $64. It's 2. No, it's 4. 48. And that should be an X and not a Y. Really stuck on the Y's right now. There we go. And our last one, kind of the trickiest of the bunch. There's a lot going on. Notice that these like terms are neither a linear pair nor vertical angles. I only have one Y value there. So there's a lot going on. I don't know really what to do. But let me go back to my vertical angles and linear pairs knowledge. Are there any angles here that are vertical? Well, it looks like maybe those could be vertical, but let me check real quick. If I highlight the sides of, that looks like it's going to be a vertical pair of angles. Okay, so I can probably solve 5x plus 4 equals 114. Or 5x equals 110. Or x equals 22. That's one way that I could solve this. And then, of course, I would just substitute that back in and see if I could solve for y. So 66 minus 24 is 42 degrees. Okay, well, if that's 42 degrees there, let me change to a different color. I could look at this set of angles here. The 42, the 2y, and the 114. That together make a straight line. And I could say, well, 114 plus 2y plus 42 equals 180. And if that's the case, 2y plus 156 equals 180. So 2y should be equal to 24, or y should be 12. That's one way to solve it. Another way to solve this would be to set up two equations. I have two sets of linear pairs. I have one linear pair here here. Sorry, wrong lines there. There's one linear pair. So if I were to add up, and this is the 2y, 5x plus 4 plus 3x minus 24 plus that 2y, I should get 180. And I guess it's not really a linear pair, right? If it's not two angles, it's three angles. But that's one equation, one set of angles that adds up to 180. And here's another straight line. So here I can say that 114 plus 2y plus 3x minus 24 equals 180. And what do you notice here about my two equations? What are they equal to? Well, they're both equal to the same thing. And if they both equal 180, if this stuff equals 180 and this stuff also equals 180, how are these two related? What can I do if I know that these two things equal the same number? Well, if they both equal 180, I can just set these things equal to each other. And I could solve. And you'll get the same thing. You get 8x plus 2y. Well, I guess the 2y's would reduce eventually, right? If I subtract those off of both sides. The 3x's would also reduce to nothing. And you'd end up with 5x minus 20 equals 90. Or 5x equals 110. And hey, if you rewind this video, you'll see that I got the same exact result when I use my vertical angles. So there are many different ways to solve this problem, and a lot of problems in math. It just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of extra effort to seek out some of those vocabulary words, some of those angle pairs, and to study the definitions of our vertical angles and our linear pairs. Let me know what questions you have, and I'll